It's been a long road since our first video on the history of the Republic, and today we've finally reached the end. We've chronicled how the Republic first came to be, the struggles it faced as it expanded, and the many threats that nearly destroyed it over the millennia. Today, we're going to be taking a look at one last era of Republic history, a final millennium of galaxy-wide peace and security. This is the story of the Republic Golden Age, the era before the rise of the Empire. Before we begin, we have a quick note to make. This video, as with all the others in this series, is based on events in the Legends timeline. Material released as part of the recent High Republic multimedia project falls within the part of the timeline we'll be discussing today, but since it's exclusively canon and can't be reconciled with the Legends, we won't be discussing it. However, since the High Republic stuff is quite good in our opinion, we might make videos about it in the future. For now though, let's get back to Legends.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
When we last left the Republic, it had fallen to its lowest point yet. It had endured 1,000 years of the New Sith Wars and 100 years of the Republic Dark Age, losing most of its territory and structure in the process. In the 7th Battle of Ruusan, however, the Republic unexpectedly emerged victorious from the New Sith Wars, thanks to the Army of Light amassed by the Jedi Order. The galaxy was still in shambles, but against all hope, the Sith were gone, as far as anyone knew. Of course, the Republic was almost gone too, and the Jedi weren't looking that healthy either, but someone was bound to pick up the pieces. That someone ended up being Tarsus Valorum. In the wake of the 7th Battle of Ruusan, what was left of the Galactic Senate elected him Supreme Chancellor, making him the first non-Jedi Chancellor in over 400 years. Valorum boldly sought not only to rebuild the Republic, but to make it better than ever before. He had quite a lot of work ahead of him, but he met the challenge head on. Valorum had barely finished moving into his new office when he began drafting a series of reforms aimed at totally overhauling the Republic, the Ruusan Reformation. As part of the Reformation, the Republic overhauled Senate representation and how sector boundaries were drawn, greatly streamlining the legislative process and allowing formerly neglected RimWorlds to finally get a say in government. In turn, Valorum transferred vast amounts of power from the Supreme Chancellor's office back to the Senate, and imposed term limits on his own position. The Reformation also dissolved the Republic military, relegating what was left of it to sector-based planetary security forces and the much smaller judicial forces. Finally, the Ruusan Reformation formally demilitarized the Jedi, legally incorporating them into the judicial forces, forcing them to give up their lordships and putting them under senatorial oversight. The Ruusan Reformation not only allowed the Republic to rapidly rebuild, but also allowed it to rebound at an unprecedented rate. Millennia's worth of bureaucratic waste were totally eliminated, and for the first time in ages, the Republic became a functional government again. As a result, the Republic started to regain the territory it had lost at a rapid rate, a process Valorum called the Great Reunification. Within a century of the Ruusan Reformation, the Republic regained most of what it had lost during the New Sith Wars. With that said, there were a few regions it never truly regained control of, such as the Sith worlds, and many other regions fell under Hutt control. While the Republic underwent the Ruusan Reformation, the Sith had a little reformation of their own. Unbeknownst to the Jedi, a single Sith Lord survived the 7th Battle of Ruusan, Darth Bane. Bane founded the Order of the Sith Lords, which he ruled according to the rule of two. He took a young girl as his apprentice, who he named Darth Zana, and together they began rebuilding the wealth and power of the Sith in secret. Unlike the Sith that came before him, Darth Bane had no illusions of overcoming the Republic by force. Instead, he concocted the Sith Grand Plan, a plot to destroy the Republic from within. He and his successors would slowly build up a vast power base, hiding behind alter egos and weakening the Republic gradually. There were flaws in Valorum's new system, and Bane was determined to find and exploit them, worsening corruption and the Republic's other weaknesses. What's more, he planned to do so without openly confronting the Jedi Order, hoping to destroy them from within as well. The 1,000 years between 1000 BBY and 32 BBY were called the Golden Age of the Republic, and in many ways, that label was accurate. The Republic's core regions enjoyed an unprecedented era of prosperity, and even the Rimworlds were better off than usual, a rarity under any galactic government. But even the Golden Age had a dark side to it. There was the literal dark side, of course. Throughout the era, the Sith grew stronger, slowly infiltrating the Republic and furthering Bane's grand plan. But the Republic faced a number of other issues during this period too, many of which it could do nothing about. 3 problems stood out: piracy, slavery, and war. The dissolution of the Republic military was at first a boon to the sectors of the Outer Rim, which could easily defend themselves for the first time in their history. But as the Golden Age went on, the planetary security forces of these remote sectors deteriorated as the Rimworlds were forced to rely exclusively on the aging tech they had been given under the Reformation. As a result, piracy became a massive problem on the Rim, as violent gangs could just steal a few more modern warships and beat the Sith out of whatever the Rimworlds could muster to defend themselves. The Republic judicial forces, including the Jedi, regularly try to crush these pirate gangs, but new ones just kept popping up. Slavery was outlawed in the Republic, of course, and whenever it was uncovered in Republic space, the Jedi put a stop to it. But there was little the Jedi could do about the Hutts, who now controlled a massive portion of the galaxy and had built a whole civilization on the backs of slaves. While the Jedi and judicial forces could deal with smaller slave civilizations, like the Zygerians or the Thalassians, there was just nothing they could do against the Hutts. Individual Jedi Knights often swooped in and freed a few hundred slaves at a time on Hutt-controlled worlds, but this ultimately didn't make a dent in the Hutts' vast slaving apparatus. Thus, slavery persisted almost unchecked in Hutt space. Lastly, the Republic had to deal with several minor conflicts over the course of the Golden Age. None of these were full-scale wars, of course, but smaller conflicts did happen. Some were simple local affairs. Others, like the Mandalorian Excision, were much more involved. The Mandalorians had been allies of the Republic and the Jedi during the New Sith Wars, from the Battle of Malrev 4 all the way to the start of the Dark Age, at which point they went off on their own. But the Republic never really came to trust the Mandalorians, and when they began a major rearmament 200 years after Ruusan, the Senate became uneasy. Fearing that another round of Mandalorian wars were brewing, the Jedi and the judicial forces launched a preemptive strike on Mandalorian space. Called the Mandalorian Excision, this war took place in 738 BBY and saw the judicial forces absolutely annihilate several Mandalorian worlds. Whole regions of worlds like Mandalore were bombed to dust, becoming vast deserts of white sand. The Mandalorians' military capabilities were almost entirely eliminated, and the Republic installed a puppet government on Mandalore led by the New Mandalorians, a local pacifist movement. This stabilized the sector and reshaped the Mandalorians into peaceful friends of the Republic, at least for a time. The militaristic side of Mandalorian culture never completely faded though, and Mandalore suffered several civil wars over the course of the Golden Age. As the Golden Age continued, the various problems of the Republic worsened, no doubt thanks in part to the Sith. 312 years before the Battle of Yavin, when the Trade Federation was founded, things had intensified to the point that the Republic was beginning to fear another collapse in the Outer Rim. During the Golden Age, the Republic had once more pushed the fringe of civilization, settling new sectors of the Western Reaches and the New Territories. However, the Republic's colonies in these regions were severely neglected and discontent was spreading. Hoping to resolve the various problems faced by the Rim with a band-aid, the Republic declared the whole Outer Rim a free trade zone, meaning that companies like the Trade Federation could operate there tax-free. This measure was successful in getting corporations to set up in the Outer Rim, but it also ended up creating more problems than it solved. The Trade Federation, the Intergalactic Banking Clan, and the other guilds built their own mini-empires out of frontier colonies. They protected Rimworlds from pirates and slavers with their private armies, but then they turned around and exploited the Rimworlds themselves. As far as the Senate was concerned, however, the effort was a success. For hundreds of years, the megacorporations were allowed to do their thing out on the rim so long as they didn't cause problems for the central government. However, as we all know full well, the uneasy peace that the megacorporations created didn't last, and eventually, the problems they caused became big enough that the Republic had to get off its butt. Naturally, this was because of Sith manipulation. In the 100 years before the Battle of Naboo, Darth Tenebrous and Darth Plagueis slowly shaped the megacorporations into Sith puppets. After he killed his master in 67 BBY, Plagueis and his new apprentice, Darth Sidious, slowly began to put these puppets to use, leading them to militarize and start new conflicts. As the Republic Golden Age started to draw to a close, the Sith orchestrated events like the Stark Hyperspace War, using the megacorps to create small fiascos that weakened the Republic. Starting in 33 BBY, the Sith began preparing for the final stage of their grand plan. By this point, the Republic had become thoroughly bogged down with corruption, and their corporate puppets all but owned vast swaths of the Outer Rim. In his guise as Senator Palpatine of the Chomel sector, Darth Sidious convinced Supreme Chancellor Finis Valorum to put an end to the Outer Rim's free trade zone. This was the political equivalent of poking a hornet's nest. The Trade Federation and the other guilds were beyond livid and objected to the measure. Valorum tried to resolve the matter by holding a summit between Senate representatives and the Trade Federation Directorate at Eriadu. But Sidious ensured that the event was a total disaster, further radicalizing the Trade Federation. We all know what happened next. Furious over the taxation of the Outer Rim trade routes, the Trade Federation launched a blockade and invasion of Naboo, the homeworld of the Senator who had put an end to their free trade zone. The following sequence of events led to the discovery of the Chosen One, the reveal of the survival of the Sith, and the Trade Federation's defeat on Naboo. But most importantly, it propelled Senator Palpatine of Naboo to the Supreme Chancellery. While everyone was distracted by the Battle of Naboo, the Sith quietly seized control of the Republic, and the rise of the Empire began. This brings us to the modern era of galactic history at long last. What you're seeing on screen is a map of the galaxy as it was during the Battle of Naboo, the start of the prequel era. We really hope you've enjoyed our series on the history of the Republic. It's been a hell of a ride, and for those of you who've been watching from the very beginning, thank you for your continued support. We'll see you all in the next video.